Hey Mo,
Hey, Ricky.
the doctor is in.
Yes, we are. We are in today with a very, very special The Doctor's In. Most people know us because we're in pink. We're doing breast cancer advocacy and awareness, but it is Colon Cancer Awareness Month. And we would be remiss if we didn't talk about this very, very important topic that is near and dear to one of our breasties. Sharon, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How's everyone? Thank you so much for having me today.
Good. You know, when Sharon calls and says, okay, Ricky, I want to talk about colon cancer. I'm taking over a show. When can I do it? You just say yes. And so that's why we're
Absolutely.
here. We do what our bestie says, and we love her dearly. And so she just had a situation with her brother, and she wanted to share with the world. We're all realizing how there's so much to know about this that we don't know. And just some of the data we pulled was that Black women are 19% more likely to be diagnosed with colorectal cancer than white women. And guess what? 34% more likely to die. For Black men, that's 24% more likely to be diagnosed. And guess what? 47% more likely to die. Outrageous.
40. It's
So, yeah, so like
astronomical.
breast cancer, a lot like breast cancer, aggressive colon cancer is on the rise in Black men and women under the age of 35. So there are a lot of parallels with the statistics for people, but oh my gosh, my dad died of colon cancer, and we keep wondering, is there a link to my breast cancer? Who knows? So I think we have so much to talk about. We have some amazing experts and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and let's get into this conversation. And Sharon, this is your show, girl.
Okay, so again, thanks for having me. Thanks for doing this. Okay, I'm Sharon Rivera Sanchez out of Richmond, Virginia. I have a few messages today. One is reach one, teach one. So basically, we're trying to reach out and teach you all about colon cancer. The other message I have is you do not have to do this alone. I'm a breast cancer survivor, an advocate, and that's who I'm about. And I brought in an expert, Dr. Mateen from Massey Cancer Center, and I'll let him go next.
Thank you, Ms. Sharon. My name is Khalid Mateen. I'm a medical oncologist with the focus on GI cancers and specifically colorectal cancer. I work at the VCU Massey Cancer Center in Richmond, Virginia, and it's been a pleasure working with Ms. Sharon on different projects that we have ongoing, including our minority underserved NCORE that we have in Richmond and the state of Virginia.
And next, I brought in another expert from University of Penn, Amin Washington, and you can go ahead.
Hi, my name is Armenta Washington. I'm a senior research coordinator with Abramson Cancer Center at Penn Medicine, and I work in the Office of Community Engagement and Outreach. And so I am going to talk to you specifically about what we do in the community.
I love that so much. I want people who are watching, if you know what age you're supposed to be screened for colon cancer, right? What is the age that you think for the average person at average risk, average Black person? I want you to put it in the chat for us because we're going to dispel a lot of myths today, and we want to make sure that we provide good information. So if you know the age, I want to see you guys start putting some numbers into the chat. Sharon, you want to tell us a little bit more about your story and how you came to be here talking about this today?
Okay. I have several stories out there on the internet because, again, I'm an advocate. So one of my youngest brother reached out to me after a story came out, and he said he thought he had colon cancer. I asked him what was the symptoms. He had 7 symptoms out of 6. He mentioned that he did not have any insurance, but we was able right away to get him into Massey Cancer Center. And I'm gonna make a very long story short. Unfortunately, he lost his battle on December the 5th. Little did I know we only had 37 days with him. I witnessed doctors, nurses trying to do everything possible to actually save his life. He was in a lot of pain. Now, let me back up a little bit. Although he didn't reach out to me November the 1st, He gave me a lot of details. We had a lot of conversation. I was there every day. He actually started having symptoms in April, and he kept it very, very quiet. He didn't tell anyone. So symptoms just got worse. They did not get better.
What symptoms, Sharon? What symptoms?
He had symptoms, or it first started where he had problem urinating. Then he said that got a little better. Then he had blood in his stool. The month of October, he lost 25 pounds. The month of November, about 40 more pounds. So he was losing weight, the pain that he described. One of the main thing he kept saying to me is my back hurt. And I couldn't figure out, what do your back have to do with colon? Little did we know the cancer had spread everywhere. It was in his back. So the first night he got admitted, when they did x-rays and stuff, they said, we see lesions in your back. Now, being a cancer advocate, I know the terminology. So I kind of like knew this doesn't look good, but that explained to me why you are complaining about your back. I couldn't say that to him. As a big sister, I literally had to be strong and go cry in the corner or cry in the bathroom. But I'm determined that no, I don't want anyone to feel that they have to keep quiet about this. In the Black community, the Black and brown community, you don't talk about your butt, unless you're talking about sex. Let's just be honest. But this is something that you must talk about. I'll let Dr. Mateen talk about the numbers, where we are at with colon cancer. To my knowledge, it's the second leading cause of death. Why wait? Why suffer in pain? Is everyone on this panel, anyone on this panel you can reach out to. We're very easy to get a hold to. And if we can't help you, which we can at least point you in the right direction. Why he stayed quiet, I don't know. I don't know if his personality is just quiet. He was in the racing community. And one thing he did, I did find out later on, he told one of the photography, I'm gonna wait until racing season is over. You cannot afford to wait. His waiting, it was all over. It was too late. We was hoping that he could get chemo. I told him when the nurses and the doctors came, you need a port. He said, what is that? A cancer diagnosis can be really, really, really overwhelming. So I was explaining, I said, yes, he wanted the port. So everything I would say, he would go, yeah, okay, I wanted the port. Little did we know the kidneys was failing. The kidneys came from him trying to master the pain with Aleve. Cancer pain, you can't master with Aleve. Aleve got a warning right on the bottle. So the main thing is that be aware, is people out here to help. You just don't have to be quiet about this. It's nothing to be ashamed of. You do not cause cancer. So that would be my message tonight. That's one of them. I'll come back, but that is definitely one of them.
How old was he, Sharon?
He was 60.
Dr. Mateen, let's let you jump in here and
Yeah,
talk about your experience in the community and with cancer patients, and especially colon cancer, and anything else you'd like to share.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. I think first of all, I'd like to start off with the fact that I think something that people don't realize is that this really is a preventable cancer. And that's really something rare for cancers. The reason I say preventable is because while there are a lot of different screening tests available, and we'll certainly talk about that later, for those patients who get a colonoscopy done, if the colonoscopy shows signs of a growth called a polyp, which we know over time, if left in the colon, becomes a cancer. So when you get that colonoscopy, that polyp is removed. So you're literally preventing a cancer from developing years down the road. So not only is it finding early cancers, it's preventing a cancer from developing down the road. So that's why cancer screening for colorectal cancer is so important, no matter which test you start off with, but really to find things early. Now, if you do find a cancer, then the earlier you find it, the higher the chance is you're going to be cured of it. If it's the stage 1, you've got a 90% chance of being cured of that cancer. If it's stage 4, unfortunately, you've probably got around a 10% chance of it being cured. And between that, stage 2 and 3, it obviously goes from about 80% down to about 50%. So that's why these tests are so important. And screening, let me just emphasize one more thing, means you do not have any symptoms. So you go and get a colon cancer screening, whether it's a colonoscopy or another test, because the guidelines tell you that it is important for you to start getting them at the age of 45, which is the new guideline. Before it used to be 50, now it's 45. So everyone, when you get close to 45, or if you're over 45 and you haven't had colon cancer screening, irrespective of you having symptoms or not having symptoms, you need to talk to your doctor about it. Now, if you're having symptoms, which means things like change in bowel habits, blood in the stool, as Ms. Sharon mentioned, weight loss, abdominal pain, please, please, please talk to your provider. Do not delay getting tests. Unfortunately, we see so many patients, I've seen so many patients over the years, either because they were like, oh, I'm young, I'm below 50, I can't have colon cancer, or I'll wait until something else, I'm done with this other thing and I'll check it out in a few months. Then we see the cancer at a more advanced stage and it's less likely to be curable. And the treatment is going to be more extensive as well. So, ultimately it's about knowing what your options are, talking to your doctor about the different screening tests, but knowing that that screening starts at 8:45 and starts when you are feeling fine. And if you're having symptoms, then going right away and getting tested.
Dr. Maten, for breast cancer, we see, the age of a mammogram is 40, and our statistics are like these statistics that Black women under 35 are getting breast cancer in incredible numbers. Is that the right age for Black people? Is it different for us, or do you think it's okay?
Yeah, at this point, I would say based on the data, 45 is the right age. And actually, it's interesting, the recommendation for African-American men had been 45 for several years before it became 45 for everyone. So we already knew for several years that African-American men in particular were getting it at a younger age. So 45 was the recommendation for them for, over 5 years. And now recently for everyone became 45. I just feel like potentially down the road, this may actually even become lower, because sadly we are seeing a slight increase every year in patients younger than 50 getting it. So I'm unfortunately seeing patients in their 30s and early 40s with colorectal too. So we certainly may see a further reduction, but right now for everyone, 45 is the appropriate cutoff.
There's a hitch though. So if there's a family history, right? Because family history, you're not at average risk anymore. And so if you have multiple family members who've had colon cancer, if somebody was young, under the age of 50 with colon cancer, you should be screened earlier, for one, 10 years younger than the youngest person. But also you should consider and talk to your doctor about genetic testing to look for hereditary mutations, because if you have a mutation, then you're predisposed to having some cells that make mistakes and your risk of cancer is higher. So this is where it comes in when we talk about knowing your history and knowing your her story, Ricky. When we don't talk about what's happening down below, and we know that Papa died of something, but we don't know what it was, we're not talking about that history. We're not getting the full picture. And I think that's where we're missing a significant number of Black and brown folks in terms of getting the right screening for their risk, because we're not assessing that risk because we're not talking about it. So we got to start talking about it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Monique. Thank you for bringing that up. So the 45 is for average risk. And if you have a family history, please talk to your provider, because yes, as Monique said, you may need it earlier. And if you had a first degree relative, say at the age of 45, then technically you start at 35. So it depends on how many people in your family, and it may not be just colon cancer. It could be other cancers as well. So we take all of that into account and do genetic testing. And the other thing really to remind everyone is we have, historically seen lower rates of colon cancer screening amongst the minorities. That is something we need to continue to work on for us as well as health systems, as at VCU, Massey, in Richmond. We continue with people like Ms. Sharon to work with our folks in the community and our advocates to really spread the word, because we want everyone, all the communities' rates to get up as close to 100% as possible. We don't want to be leaving everyone behind in this.
Let me
Right.
rope you in, Ms. Armenta. Let me ask you, what are you seeing in terms of community engagement? When you start talking about the word colon cancer, what does the community have to say? And what are some of the myths that they might have and some of the reactions and responses you get?
So one of the biggest things is people oftentimes when we're trying to educate, they say, oh, I don't have to worry about that because I don't have a colon. Well, that's one thing both men and women have in common is they both have a colon. Women might not have a prostate, but they definitely have a colon, right? That's one thing. I tease people and tell them that it's the best sleep that you'll ever have, right? But
Mhm.
oftentimes people are very leery of being sedated. They tell stories about the PrEP, which I tell everyone, including myself, I was not able to tolerate the PrEP, but there's so many different ways that you can prepare for a colonoscopy if that's what you need. I often also help people to understand that all chronic diseases, including cancer, are related. So the things that put you at risk for diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease are the same things that put you at risk for cancer. And so being that this is one of the most preventable diseases and we do have screening, it's the lifestyle. So I often try to encourage people to consider a different lifestyle. What is it that you're putting in your mouth every day? What is it that you're doing? I'm not telling you to join a gym, but maybe you can get off the bus at a different corner and walk one block, take the stairs, dance, vacuum, right? What are some things that, real simple things that we can do every day to have a healthier lifestyle and look at what it is that you're eating. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is, like Dr. Gary mentioned, is family history, right? If after I educate people, if they take nothing away, my take home message is always to try to find out in your family, what is your history? I say when you go to the doctors, they have you fill out that paper, both sides, right? They're asking those questions for a specific reason so that people need to find out as much as possible. Some people don't know their history, but for those of us that are attached to our biological families, there's always somebody in the family that knows all the family business, right? And that's the person that we need to find out from what Uncle Bubble died from and what Aunt Sissy died from. And you need to talk to those people in the family to find out exactly what they may know, right? And when we have our family gatherings, our family reunions, these are the kind of things that we need to be talking about. And then later on, I'll talk more specifically about what we're doing in our community and what is happening nationally with my colleagues to address these access issues and to remove some of the barriers. But I wanted Dr. Gary and Dr. Mateen to talk about the Lynch syndrome, because oftentimes people don't understand exactly what that is.
I'm happy to start off on that and then let Dr. Gary take over after that. I mean, it's one of the genetic conditions that can cause about 5% of colon cancers.
What's it called? What's it called?
Lynch syndrome, LYNCH.
Okay.
So about 5% of colorectal cancers are associated with this, and it doesn't only increase the risk for colorectal cancer, but increases the risk for several other cancers, including uterine cancer, bladder cancer, stomach cancer, breast cancer, and other neuroendocrine cancers as well of the GI tract. And that's where this family history part really comes in, because we know that these patients who have that syndrome can have a significantly increased risk of colon cancer, sometimes getting diagnosed at an early age. And often these patients, if they're diagnosed with one colon cancer or one particular malignancy, we know the risk of other cancers is so high within the rest of the colon and other areas that sometimes they need to have those areas removed. For example, if a person with colon cancer has Lynch syndrome, we often recommend or at least talk to them about having their entire colon removed because they have such a high risk of getting cancer in the remaining portion of the colon. The other facet that's really interesting is that folks with Lynch syndrome can interestingly have a very profound positive response to immunotherapy, which is one of the newer therapies that's approved in colorectal cancer. So while it's obviously not good to have Lynch syndrome because it puts you at increased risk of these cancers, if you do develop colon cancer, it seems that you get a better response to therapies, including that you can get responses to immunotherapy. But knowing if you have it is important because, again, knowing is better than not knowing, because then you can be on the lookout for other cancers as well, and other people in your family can get screened at an appropriate and younger age, and again, prevent cancers before they develop.
Absolutely. I would echo everything that Dr. Mateen said. You know, when we talk about hereditary cancers that are genetic, it means that the spell checker, the gatekeeper genes are faulty. And that can happen. That means the mistakes can happen in multiple places, like he said, and not just the colon, the stomach, the uterus. And so, for example, people who have Lynch syndrome have up to 40% higher risk for developing uterine cancer, right? And so it's really, really important, like, you know, Ms. Armenta said, to know that family history. We get together for those family reunions, put it on the family tree, little CRC, colorectal cancer, 46, prostate cancer, so-and-so had hypertension, so-and-so had diabetes. We need to talk about all of this stuff, and we can test for that. Genetic testing used to not be as available, particularly for our communities. It used to be very expensive, but now we look for changes in the genes. Or if you get your colonoscopy and they find polyps, they can check for these changes sometimes in the polyps as well to see if you're on your way to getting a colon cancer, or if you have changes in the genes of that polyp that predispose it to getting cancer. And then we can do the genetic testing or the hereditary testing from there. So this is all really important stuff because it's not just about your colon, you know, and everybody knows, you know, your bowels are super important, but this is not just about that place we don't like to talk about. Now, I put a question in the chat and I asked people if they know what is the number one symptom of early stage colon cancer. What's the number one symptom of colon cancer? And so far, nobody's got it. So we're going to wait a few minutes longer and see if anybody has the answer. Somebody said change in stool. That is not the correct answer, but we want you to be thinking about this because how would you know if you had it?
Right.
And I'll give you a hint. Same as the symptoms of early stage breast cancer. What are the symptoms?
All right. That's interesting. All right. While we're waiting for an answer, I want to bring this up. And this is so true of Sharon's brother. And you know, you guys have all talked about how important it is to talk about this with your families, to talk about history, to talk about how you feel. And we don't do that. Black people just don't do it. And look at Sharon's brother. He hid it. My dad also hid colon cancer from our family. Like, what is it about our Black men that won't make them go to the doctor? And I know we as Black women are always fighting with these men. Did you get your checkup? Did you get your PSA check? Did you get, you know, did you go? Because they just won't go. And I think we have to really change how our community thinks about health, whether it is riding the bus an extra block. I love that idea. I meant to like, but how do we make this a community conversation, a family conversation, a kitchen table conversation that we talk about all health? And I think that's something we all have to take responsibility for in our families. I know for, you know, my family story, I make everybody talk about their numbers at Thanksgiving dinner before they can eat. What's your PSA? What's your A1C? When was your mammogram? And they hate me. They hate me because I'm the cook and I got the turkey. You want the turkey? You got to bring the numbers. But that was my way of like forcing the conversation in my family. And I think we all need to find that because we are just not talking until somebody's dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I think we just,
get on hospice, you know?
I think it's just like you said, Ricky, we just have to continue to keep having a conversation. I want to touch on something real quick. We talked about risk. I'm super high risk. I'm so high risk. Breast cancer, not any breast cancer, triple negative breast cancer.
Yeah.
Age, brother just passed. I'm high risk. So a lot of times, like Dr. Mo said, the gatekeeper, we call to make appointment. So whoever's answering that phone, they say, no, you're not due for 10 years. No, that's not true. Sometimes you have to educate the gatekeeper. Okay, well, let me put you on hold or I'll call you back to talk to the doctor. You have to insist, you have to educate yourself to know I'm so high, 10 years is not good enough. I need it every 5 years. I even check to see, hey, is it every 3 years? I also want to talk about one of the biggest myths that I'm hearing. And Dr. Martine can answer this. I hope I pronounce it right. Colonic versus colonoscopy. This is what I'm hearing.
Colonic.
I done heard it twice that no, I'm not doing it because I'm not put to sleep and it's $60. What test is $60? So I want him to let people know what's the difference. For me, the difference is I'm trying to flatten my stomach and I want my skin to look good. Not that I'm trying to save my life, but let him speak. If he could speak on that so people can really understand that is not, that they two separate things.
So yes, it has to be one of the recommended, tests for cancer screening. So certainly while colonoscopy is felt to kind of be like the gold standard, because not only does it detect things, but it can remove things, like a polyp, as I mentioned, and biopsies can be done if indicated. But the other tests that are approved are the stool tests, like the FOBT, or more recently now the better test, which is the FIT testing, the fecal immunochemical testing, which is more sensitive than the fecal occult blood testing. There's a stool DNA test called Cologuard, which is also available, which you have to check that it's covered by your insurance, which tests basically DNA changes that are happening in the lining of your colon. And, obviously, if the FIT or the Cologuard test is positive, then the next step is going to be a colonoscopy. There's also flexible sigmoidoscopy that can be done, although that only visualizes the lower third of your colon. That can be used in combination with the stool FIT or FOBT testing as well. And finally, there's a virtual colonoscopy, which is a form of CT testing where contrast is given and you can visualize the colon. It's somewhat of a test that really depends on the experience of the radiologist who's reading that. So you can do it in centers where they do a lot of those and their experience, but realize that, again, if an abnormality is seen on that, the next test will then be a colonoscopy.
So ultimately, everything is going to end with a colonoscopy.
If something is abnormal, although I will say, in the beginning, if someone does not want to get a colonoscopy, it's absolutely fine to talk to your provider about these one other tests. Any screening is better than no screening. So I definitely would say get in the door, get one of the tests, and then yes, if the next step is a colonoscopy, then you talk to your doctor about that.
Is there a place where we
Can
can
you
go find those
complain?
tests that you just said, because I can't spell those words. To put
What's
in the
that,
chat.
please? Yeah, we'll put a
Like,
link for it
website
in
where
the,
you find all
in
the
the
screening
chat.
things. Yeah, you
But
got it.
can you explain the colonic? That's what people are getting. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh, so
Yes.
Out
is
in
this
the
like,
field.
so is this like a colon cleansing, basically?
Right.
Yeah. So
Sounds like an
that's
enema.
not
Sounds like an
so that's
enema.
not really a screening. So you're just basically getting a colon cleanse. There's no testing being done. So that is not one of the approved testing for colon cancer screening.
Someone said,
I gotta jump in here. Go ahead.
someone described a colonic as getting your bowels clean with a straw,
Ugh.
right?
Oh, gross.
So if you
More
would
like a garden
imagine,
hose, but yeah.
it's like getting your bowel is like 12, is it 12 feet? About 12 feet,
There's a lot
10
of
to 12, yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty big, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't do anything. So
No.
what I also explained it does do something. It flattens your stomach, right? And it cleans you out, but it's like taking an enema for the most part.
Yeah.
But one of the things to explain to people also is that a polyp is nothing more than similar to like a skin tag, right? oftentimes you see people have skin tags on their face. It's something that's simple, that it's just when you're getting a screening, they're not going to wake you up and say, oh, you have a polyp and you have to come back. They're going to remove them, right? And if you go at the recommended time, chances are you might have one or two. Unfortunately, in my own family, I do this work and my mother was told not to come back for 10 years. She just had 10 polyps removed from her stomach and from her colon. You know how upsetting that is for me, right? Because the doctor gave her the wrong information. And so I think Sharon was saying too, you have to be your own best advocate. If the doctor is telling you something that you know absolutely is the wrong thing, then you need to change your doctor. You need to go see someone else, or you need to ask for a different doctor within that same practice. And that's what I wanted to say.
Couple points to touch on here on the subject of colonics, because I know that a lot of folks who are watching are becoming more bowel conscious, let's just say. And there are a lot of people doing detoxes, doing enemas, doing colon cleanses, and all sorts of things to help get rid of the toxins in the body as a means to be more healthy and reduce your risk for cancer and everything else. If you're going to do those sorts of cleanses, which again are not necessarily what's recommended for colonoscopy, but you really want to consider, and I'm just going to keep it real with people, you know, if you're going to be doing all that, you might as well let us take a scope and take a look up there, right? To look for polyps and overgrowth and things. So I tell my patients, listen, use it as a jump start to your fitness revolution. You've been talking about losing weight and this and that. Great. That bowel prep for your colonoscopy is going to clean you out. You will lose weight, you will lose water, you might get a little dehydrated, which we need to talk about separately, but it's a great way to begin your fitness, revolution, because you're going to feel better, have more energy. You'll know that there's nothing overgrowing inside your colon. It's like having buildup in your pipes, right? You get that muck and stuff and you get these lumps, and many times they're nothing, but the other tests don't always account for that. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that COVID has really done a number on colon cancer screening. We were down nearly 90% at the height of the coronavirus because people couldn't come to the hospital. They couldn't get minor procedures. There were issues of access. And so if all you can get is the Cologuard and you poop in a box and mail it, guess what? That's worth it. It's worth it to do something rather than nothing. But now is the time to return to screening. And we cannot be afraid of that, because we're estimating that there's going to be 10,000 plus more deaths from colon cancer as a result of the coronavirus, because we waited and people had symptoms, people have polyps, and those things are progressing. So we got to get that screening in. Now that COVID is starting to die down a little, everybody want to have a hot girl summer, but guess what? No hot girl summer without that colonoscopy. Get that mammogram, get all those screenings done so you can enjoy yourself.
Yep, I know. Well, my dad died of colon cancer, and so I immediately went to get when I was 50. So it was right, like I immediately a month later went to get my first one. And then the last one I did a year ago, they found 3 polyps. And so, but they said, okay, we'll come back in 5 years. I'm like, well, I don't want to come back in 5 years. My dad died of colon cancer. Isn't there a different rule for that? And I demanded that I go back in 3 years. I got them to commit to 3 years, but I had to scream and yell about that to get, well, hold on, I'm not waiting 5 years. I had breast cancer. Are you kidding? No, I need better, I need better care. So I think we all have to, tell you every day, advocate for yourself, and you don't have to follow the norm, like make your own norm. I mean, clearly you have to fight for it sometimes, but no is never the answer. It's how, and work it out with your providers. But even my colon doctor, my colonoscopy doctor, it's like a factory. You walk in there, everybody's like, they line you up in the morning. It's like a machine. And I know these doctors are just making bank. I mean, it's like the whole building is all they do is colonoscopies all day. And I think there's like 6 doctors in the practice, and they just like bam, 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 look at butts all day, and so I always feel like uncomfortable there because I don't feel like I'm treated like a patient. I feel like it's like a machine, you know what I mean? But I still go, that's like the #1 place in Annapolis, Maryland to go, but and you see all your friends there too, but I mean, I guess
it's a procedure though. I mean, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you don't want, wine and the lights dim and Barry White playing either. That's the total.
I got that. I mean, I feel like, could somebody talk to me or
procedure.
something? Just put me in the row and like give you the junk and like knock you out and like you're done, But I don't know.
Get you in
But
and
we
get you
don't have
out.
a chance to, we don't have a chance to talk. Like, I mean, look at how much time you spend with patients, Mo, I mean, I don't get that from the colon doctor. So I don't know, maybe help me out with that, Dr. Matin.
Well, they're at the wrong end for that, I guess. So that's all I'll say. But
I
no,
wanna oh, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, the two things I'll just add is one, the preps are getting better. There are different preps that, having had this, colonoscopy done myself, I can tell you that preps are not what they used to be 10, 15 years ago. So while they're still not pleasant, but they're not as bad as they used to be. And second, you're sedated during the procedure. So you fall asleep, they do the procedure, you wake up and you walk out of there. So while certainly, you don't want to get a colonoscopy if you don't need one, but they make it as bearable as possible. So,
Because the prep does suck.
We
But
got some questions in the chat. I wanna address these questions. And the first question is, can polyps become cancerous? Dr. Mateen, your answer.
yes, absolutely. That's why they need to be found and removed.
And if you find a polyp, does it mean you're gonna need a colonoscopy again the next year?
So it depends on what the pathology on that polyp is. The guidelines, there is a little bit of gray room, kind of wiggle room there, but you're probably going to need somewhere in the range of 3 to 5 years, but it'll depend on kind of family history, what kind of polyp, the pathology. Of course, if it is a polyp that showed some what we call dysplasia or almost precancerous findings, then you'll need one a lot sooner, probably in about 6 to 12 months. So it depends on a lot of different factors that you want to discuss with your provider.
Great. Ms. Armenta, you want to tell us a little bit about your community initiatives? How are we getting the word spread around and getting folks into clinical trials? How's that going?
I want to first talk about the 90% reduction in screening, right? So at the height of the pandemic, there was a 90% reduction in not just colon screening, but in mammograms, right? And so we know down the line,
90%.
90%.
Cervical
90.
cancer screening too, breast, colon, and cervical. Yep.
Yep, 90, right? And so what we knew is long-term, this was going to be a bigger issue. And so in the height of the pandemic in August of 2020, we all can remember where we were when Black Panther died, right? So and then on top of the pandemic, we had him die from colon cancer at a younger age than expected, excuse me. And so what we did in Philadelphia is we partnered with Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church, Einstein Healthcare Network, Penn Medicine. We all came together. We said we have to address this disparity in the Black and brown community, and we went to the parking lot. Just like the Black Doctors Consortium was providing COVID services in the parking lot, we partnered with them and Enon and whoever else, and we provided a drive-by flu fit. We provided a fit, we provided a flu shot along with the fit, which is the best practice of the American Cancer Society. People registered online, they drove up in their cars, they were handed the kit, a healthcare professional explained how to use it, answered their questions, gave them the fit to take home, showed them how to return it. It was a box right at the church vestibule. And weekly, we picked those up and took them to the lab, called them back with their results. It was that simple. We had an 80.5% return rate. We had over 300 people participate to date. And we had 15 individuals who had a positive fit out of 300, right? Which means those 15 people, their lives were saved, right?
Wow.
None of them had any cancerous findings, which was a beautiful thing out of those 15. And so we continue to do that. What my colleagues are doing nationally is a project called Screen to Save. At the end of the day, this is a best practice of the National Cancer Institute. It's called Screen to Save. And so if you Google Screen to Save, like your screen on your house, TO, save, you will find that there are people similar to myself, health educators around the country who are providing the services free of charge to your community, all right? The last thing that we're doing, which Sharon just is one of our graduates, we trained 19 individuals from the community around clinical trials, or I should say cancer research, to be more specific. Not just clinical trials, but about biospecimen, what is biospecimen research and what is a biospecimen sample. And so people similar to Sharon go back to their respective communities. They're now armed with a bunch of information. Sharon keeps wanting to talk about this functional status because she learned about that in the training, right? And so what these individuals do is they go back to their community, they talk to individuals that they encounter in their natural networks or in the groups that they belong to. Should it come up, they say, hey, have you ever heard about a clinical trial? Have you ever heard about biospecimen research? Oh, here's some information. Here's a phone number to call. Here's a website to go visit. That is that simple. And so what we're doing is trying to address all access issues for individuals, not just in Philadelphia, but nationwide, to help people to get what they need.
So how can we encourage that in other areas? I mean, this is like amazing work that you're doing, and how many lives that you're saying are phenomenal, phenomenal. So what if you live in Annapolis, Maryland, like me, or Richmond, like Sharon, or like how can we encourage this activity to happen in our community? Should we start with a church, or like, what do you think is a good way to stimulate some activity in our areas?
Well, one of the things that I've tried to do with Sharon is there is always other organizations that have the same similar focus, right? So there's national organizations like the National Colorectal Cancer Alliance. There is the American Cancer Society. There are what are called National Outreach Network Community Health Educators, which I am one for the National Cancer Institute. There are not 52, but there's over 70 comprehensive cancer centers in the country. And so many of those comprehensive cancer centers have been funded with an individual like myself who is designated to go out into the community and to help the underserved community to be able to access these services.
Is it screentosave.com or .org?
It's actually, the address is cancer.gov/screen to save. I put it in the chat.
Okay, you put it in. Okay, great. Then I won't.
And Ricky, let me jump in real quick and let
Yeah.
you know what we're doing here in Richmond, but you still can go to ACS or wherever you live. So Massey Cancer Center actually have partnered with several community organizations. And what we are doing here, Saving Pennies for a Cure, as well as Trials of Color, we are doing a whole campaign on getting the word out. Meaning, I love boots on the ground. So I have partnered with several partners down in Petersburg. One is a church, Dinwiddie. We got the racetrack there, and we are holding seminars to talk about this, to have this same conversation. When we look at some of the barriers, it's the same barriers as, other, breast cancer have. One of the barriers that, especially now with gas, is transportation. So we actually can assist, thanks to Massey Cancer Center, with this community grant to get people to the doctor for screening. Of course, we have to verify it. So I don't want people just thinking we're going to hand them a gas card. It's not that easy. But at least we have that availability. So we are walking and talking. We have several neighborhoods planned. We have barber shops that we are partnering with. We gonna have signs going out at public transportation. So for us here, it just doesn't stop for the month of March. Colon cancer, Dr. Mateen would have to answer this, but my knowledge is the second leading cause of death in America, especially in Black America. So we plan on really hitting hard to get this word out. So that's what we're doing on this end. We welcome any partnership. We are very grateful that Massey, we didn't even know that they had put in for this community grant, but we are very grateful to give me a voice. I mean, 37 days. I had 37 days to spend with my brother. That was it. I knew nothing about planning funeral and blah, blah, blah. So one of my goals is that's what we gonna do. Also, from a family standpoint, we are working on giving a scholarship in his name every year. So we're still working on that. His birthday is April the 14th. More will come out on that April the 14th. The racetrack, they are actually have renamed the media center. My brother's name is Clarence Hanner. That center is now called the Clarence Hanner Media Center.
Awesome.
So, yeah, when people ask, well, why? Who is this person? What I really wanted them to know, it's a very nice and kind person, but he thought that he didn't have a voice, and he had a voice. And I was within arm reach, within a phone call, and now I'm his voice. So that's what we are doing, thanks to Massey.
Thanks. So Sharon, I'm going to put your email in the comments too, because maybe can people reach out to you to help them figure out how to do this stuff in their cities or in
Oh,
their
yeah, you know,
info at Saving Pennies,
absolutely.
right? Info at Saving Pam, and put your info at Saving Pennies.
And
Yeah.
Ricky, if I may just add one thing, I think I'm glad you brought up churches or places of worship, because one thing that our cancer center director, Dr. Robert Wynn has done over the last 2 years is he has a weekly meeting with leaders, clergy called Facts and Faith Fridays, where basically he has discussions around health issues with members of the clergy, and then that they are able to then take it back to their congregations. And whether it was COVID during the pandemic or cancer screening, tobacco cessation, I think these are important topics for us, to be really constantly be engaged with members in the community. And I think places of worship are a great way to engage communities, whether it's minority or otherwise.
I agree
Great.
with
What's
that.
that
And I was
called again? Yeah, what's that called?
gonna
Facts and
say that.
Facts and Faith Fridays. So
Facts
it's
and
something
Faith
that
Fridays.
Facts and faith. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have town halls in our community, and I think it's
Yeah.
important, even for the organizations, the local cancer advocacy organizations to sort of cross over and do some crossover community events and some town halls and start talking about these things so that it's not in a vacuum or asylum where we just do breast or we just do this. If we're going to encourage people to talk about it, we can talk about all of it. I want to switch gears for a minute, and I want us to talk a little bit about prevention, about diet, about things that people can do to reduce their risk for colon cancer, because everybody who's watching is really, we know what happens once you get sick, but what can we do to reduce our risk? Dr. Mateen, would you like to start?
Absolutely. So a few of the things that I think over the years have come up is, we know that there are certain things in the diet that either increase or decrease the risk. So generally, the recommendations are a diet rich in fruit and vegetables is good for one in terms of lowering your risk of colorectal cancer. We do know that red meats and processed meats in particular are potentially carcinogenic. In fact, a few years ago, the World Health Organization labeled red meat as a potential carcinogen and processed meats as a carcinogen. So I think limiting our consumption of red meats and processed meats, which are kind of like our deli meats, to as little as possible is better. Fresh meats and white meats are safer. Keeping one's weight in control, physical activity, exercise are beneficial. Colorectal cancer is one where there's a direct correlation between obesity and the risk of cancer, and on the flip side also reducing your risk when you reduce your weight and increase physical activity and exercise. And vitamin D is one other thing that has been associated. So when you talk to your primary care doctor talking about are my vitamin D levels appropriate, or should I be taking more vitamin D, I think most, if not all of us these days are to some extent vitamin D deficient because we don't spend as much time in the sun as humans have historically done. We're inside too much on electronics like we are right now, actually. So, but yeah, get your vitamin D and eat healthy and stay active are things that help with colorectal cancer prevention and are good for you otherwise too.
Absolutely.
And
Let me put in a plug for fiber, right? Put in a plug for a plant-based diet. It doesn't have to be entirely plant-based, but somebody did ask about it in the chat and they said, can that reduce your risk? And the answer is absolutely. And fiber is not just good for moving your bowels, because what's the concern if you only poop once a week, right? What if that's your norm and you just poop once a week? The concern is that the bacteria from that stool will get into the walls of the colon and it'll go through the walls of that colon into your bloodstream. And that's called gut translocation or bacterial translocation. So the bacteria doesn't pass through and come out in the commode, it comes out into you, and it creates places for inflammation and badness to happen in the body. So gut health is good for your entire wellness. So you should be moving those bowels, and a good high fiber diet is great for that.
I wanted to mention the carcinogens, right? So the cancer causing things that we do. So what happens in our community, we already eat we eat superfoods already just by default, right? But what happens is we turn those superfoods into not so good foods by overcooking them and overprocessing them. So baked sweet potatoes and collard greens and kale and all of the stuff that we've always been eating, those green leafy vegetables. We don't have to put all of the fats in them. We can use chicken broth and we can use vegetable base of things to make them just as tasty. And we don't have to cook them for 3 hours, right? We can cook them within 1 hour, right? We can just add some olive oil and some garlic, right? To tenderize those collard greens if you think they're not tender enough, and cook them in 1 hour and not 3. But the carcinogen,
like overnight, right? Like my
yeah,
grandma, right?
exactly.
Like leave them overnight.
Yeah,
Really?
the carcinogen, one of the things that I say is when you're about to avoid the fried foods, but if you're going to fry some food, because I know every now and again we all like to have our fried food, right? But if for some reason that oil smokes, you need to put it to the side, you need to let it cool off, and you need to pour it out. Because any oil that has smoked has now become a carcinogen, right? So you're about to fry your chicken, you answered the phone, you forgot you had the grease on the stove, let it cool off and get some new oil, all right?
People hear that? Do you hear that? Who does that?
The fry.
Not only that, if the oil is solid at room temperature, you got to worry about it. We talk about trans fatty acids are hypothesized to be carcinogenic. There's no direct link, but you really want to be careful about the types of oils that you consume, because my grandmother used to cook with lard and Crisco, and it sure did make the chicken and fish and everything else delicious. But that's not what we want clogging up our arteries. It's not what we want clogging up our colon. So we got to be real careful about it.
Wow, it's a lot, you guys. It's a lot, just knowing what to do, the screening. I think the screening is just so important that we're not doing, and just talking about it, and I think.
Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Faith over fear.
Faith over fear.
Right.
Just gotta do the work. Gotta do the work.
And let me just say, for those those that are on this call and that you have not been screened, right? You are due. There is such a thing as a FIT that we've talked about, right? You go to your doctor's office and you say, listen, I am afraid to get this colon screening done. I'm not comfortable getting the colonoscopy. Talk to your doctor about getting the FIT, the FIT, right? The fecal immunochemical test. They can give that test to you at the doctor's office. You can take it home. You can do it in the comfort of your home. It's a little teeny brush, smaller than the brush on the nail polish, right? Get just a little teeny inky binky bit of your stool. You put it in the tube, you take it back, or you send it back to your doctor's office, and they call you with the results. That gives you 1 year to know that I have a negative result or I have a positive result, right? And at the end of the day, if you have a positive, you simply have to go and talk to your doctor again about getting the screening.
I love that you said that, because getting a ride and taking a day off from work is a real barrier for people getting colon screening. It's not like you just, walk in and you can get that colon screening. You got to do a prep right? You got to get a ride because it's anesthesia. Somebody else now has to take off a day, and that can be a hardship for people. And so if you're watching, you're like, yeah, you know what? I really don't have that time to spend. I can't commit to that prep. I have, other things, or I'm the breadwinner and I don't have anybody who can give me a ride. Then start looking into some of these at-home tests, because you can do something right from where you are. And then if you need additional testing, and if you have hemorrhoids, somebody brought up the subject of hemorrhoids. If you have hemorrhoids and you have bleeding from your rectum, these tests are going to come back positive. And so for you need to see a doctor anyway, because if you're having any blood or from your rectum, that's a concern, and you want to make sure, and don't just assume, oh, it's a hemorrhoid, because that has happened to many folks. They have some blood coming out and oh, it's just a hemorrhoid. It's not just a hemorrhoid. So if you don't have a magnifying glass and a scope for you to look back there, you need to go see your doctor and get that checked out. Don't assume.
That's definitely a Black men thing. Like who do you know who had blood in their stool, didn't check it out? Like, are you crazy? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're not a doctor. You got to check it out, right? I've had so many men tell me that.
I think
Ricky,
people just, I think they are afraid of the unknown, but in these cases, you can't be afraid. Even if you are afraid, reach out and touch.
Ask
I
somebody.
mean, the area that we are covering is Petersburg, Virginia, and that's part of Massey catchment area. So we are down there. We have several events. Underserved, we will be down there. If you need a ride, I am happy to put our toll-free number in here. We'll make it happen. Whatever the problem is, we'll make it happen. We do cut off our lines at 5 o'clock. That doesn't mean that I'm not online. So if you need help, I would hate to see anyone go through this when it can be preventable. That's the thing. This is the one cancer that is. So I'm glad that people told me, no, I don't want to do it because they don't put you to sleep. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's the best sleep
That's
ever.
the part, right?
Yeah, you just don't sleep long. You wake up about 40 and it's like, what? I want to sleep for 2 hours. So please don't be, my lesson is don't be silent. Don't be afraid to reach out. Google us if you don't know the name. We all know advocates all over. New York, Florida, Hawaii, we can connect you. So reach out. It's just not one organization. It's many organizations out here. And I never thought I would be on a platform speaking of colon cancer, because my whole focus was on breast. But I can tell you, I will be speaking. I am the voice for my brother now. And I think if he had one thing he could say now, he would say, why did I wait? Why didn't I speak up? So it's no need to be ashamed or scared to speak up or whatever. I don't have the money. I can't afford to take off. The groceries are too high. Reach out. We can connect you with someone and make it happen. That would be that's my thing.
Right. Dr. Massey, Dr. Maten, you were going to say something for Sharon.
I don't have much left to say after Sharon. I just want to echo everything she has said, because I think ultimately the biggest thing that's come out today is, for everyone who's listening today, is just talk to your family and your neighbors about this. Talk about your family history. Talk about, for average risk starting at 45. Talk about if you're having symptoms, seeing your doctor. Talk about colon cancer, saving lives, preventing cancer. Just don't be afraid to talk. This is something we need to talk about, because ultimately we can help each other. There's no reason to hide it or think that you can just tough it out. That only makes it worse. It's something, you need to talk about as soon as possible, and, just get whatever testing it is, just get it done, get it out of the way, so you have peace of mind and you can have a brighter, healthier future.
Wow, thank you so much. Wow, what an interesting conversation. Well, we're usually talking about boobs, right? But the numbers are similar in terms of mortality. We got to fix it. And this one is controllable. Mo, did anyone answer your question earlier?
You know, nobody got it right. I put it in the chat. The number one symptom of early stage colon cancer, and this is early, the number one symptom is no symptom at all. It's
Exactly.
found incidentally on a colonoscopy. And so I just put in the chat, no excuses, because if we don't look, we won't find until it's possibly too late. I mean, imagine if we could, squeeze and get a little nipple discharge and tell if we have breast cancer, right? Wouldn't that be a thing? But right, we can look in the colon and we can see if there's polyps and we can get rid of them early. There's a way to detect this and there's a way to prevent this. And this is something that's it's worth your life, it's worth your time. You got to get over that fear, whatever the barriers are. People have given you on this webinar every single measure of relief for any excuse that you've got. It hurts. I don't want to do the prep. I can't afford it. I can't get a ride. Whatever it is, we got some solutions for you to get
Call
your
us.
colon checked one way or another, whether they do the scope or not. And if you're one of those people who have hemorrhoids and other things, I see some people in the chat talking about, how these repeated bowel movements are uncomfortable. Talk to your doctor, because that's not normal either. And you need a diet that's more high in fiber, and you shouldn't be having pain with your bowel movements. But we got to talk about it. And you sit down and you ask your family member, how was your day? And guess what? You can ask your loved one, did you poop? Did you poop today? How are your bowels?
Did you poop?
I ask my patients all the time, how you doing? Feeling good? Okay, when's the last time you moved your bowels? Are you pooping regularly? How's your diet? How's your spirits? How was your day? Right? We got to normalize these conversations, because this is the stuff that matters for our lives. And if you're ashamed and afraid to talk about it, no more.
Matter of life and death. Matter
Right.
of life and death. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. It was so great having you here. You guys have to come back again. And Sharon, you fight like a girl every day. I know you do, girl. I love you for that.
Thank you. And thank you. Thank everyone, all the participating, everyone out there in internet land. Thank you as well. And again, teach one, reach one. It's very important. It is a matter of life and death.
When you go to a dinner with your family tonight, bring it up. Bring it up today, today.
Yeah,
Right.
well, your presence here has made a difference. So Dr. Mateen, we thank you very much. Ms. Armenta Washington, we want to see what you're doing in every city. We want all the churches and all the community advocates and leaders coming together. We want ambassadors everywhere. Sharon, keep doing what you're doing, because it is working. People in the chat are saying, you know what, I'm gonna get my colonoscopy. You know what, I moved my bowels today. And it sounds like a funny thing to put in the chat, but you could tell us. I
Hey,
want to know.
Bring it.
We want to know, and we care. We are our sisters and our brothers' keepers. So, this stuff matters more than you all know. And your brother's life and his legacy, you give his life a voice, and his voice goes on through you.
You
So,
honor. Yeah.
yeah.
We'll post your video too on our Facebook page. Armin, the one you put in the chat from your actually, we'll post it on our page. So, wow, thank you. Blessing.
Thank you.
We hope it's been relatable, reliable, and real. That's what we do every Wednesday night here on blackdoctor.org. We're thankful for the platform and the sponsors and our guests and people watching. So we'll see you
Yeah,
next
and
Wednesday.
we always end it with breasty love.
It's true. Colon cancer love.
Colon
Look at that
cancer
blue.
love.
There it is. There
Love
it is.
for
It's
all.
blue. Love for
Yeah, all
all.
the love, all the
That's
love.
right. Love your
Thank you.
colon.
Thank you
Blessing.
all.
Thank you.
Have a good
Be
night.
healthy, be
Thank
safe.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Martin.
Bye-bye. Thank you.